Dave, thanks for sitting down with me today. I appreciate it.
Glad to do it.
June 1st was a big day for Corteva. Became a standalone company and got lots to ask of that about you. But before we get to that, can you tell us a little bit about who's Dave? How'd you get into this whole agricultural thing? You've had a long history now with Corteva and started with Pioneer back in 1988, which I would just like to point out to our viewers. That was the year I graduated from high school, and that's the year that you started with Pioneer. So that's good. We're connected on that.
Yeah.
How did it all get started? What do I need to know about Dave?
Well, I grew up in Nova Scotia. My father was a military man, but my mother and my dad met in the UK when he was there training in military college. Yeah. She's from a farm in the UK. Okay. That's really where the connection is. So visiting her brother's farms in the UK as a young child, I really became intrigued by agriculture. I then went through high school, attended the university, Dalhousie University in Halifax, studied biology and genetics, piqued my interest, and then realized after a BSc in genetics that you needed to apply that in some way to be employable. Right. So I thought about my agricultural interest and sort of brought the two together, genetics and agriculture, and came to the University of Guelph, studied corn breeding there, and took a position in a corn breeding program at King Grain at the time in Chatham. And I've been in the industry ever since. I attended CSGA meetings when I was with King in the mid-'80s. And then after a number of years there was a startup called Allelix that was at the forefront of canola hybridization, and that was pretty cool at the time, taking a crop from being open pollinated to hybrid. And they were looking for someone to refine their seed production system, their hybridization system, and that sounded like a really neat opportunity. So over to Allelix I went, and then along came Pioneer a couple of years later that acquired that business, and that's how I became a member of the Pioneer organization, which then was acquired by DuPont, which more recently underwent a merger with Dow and then spun out Corteva. So that's sort of the path, the corporate journey for me. But I think what always intrigued me about ag was, it sounds trite, I guess, but it was just the fact that you are creating value from what the earth provides, and that's been the draw for me. And I remember as a really young person, this shows how intellectual I am. I thought to myself, you know what? I think farmers are going to need seed every year. That seems like a good line of work that probably isn't going to go away. Right. And that was part of my thinking of pursuing plant genetics.
I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, well said. So you've progressed your way up through the ranks now, technical services manager with Corteva?
Well, I've been in the industry over about 35 years. Started in '84. Yeah, 35 years. Right. 25 of those were in plant breeding roles, and so I really, it was one of those cases where you trained as a plant breeder, did plant breeding, sort of the way I kind of drew it up, I suppose. And then 10 years ago, the opportunity to work on the business side in this function came along. And that intrigued me, a refreshing change to manage our technical group that identifies the products that we sell and plans their volume and retirement and supports those products in the field. And so I've enjoyed doing that for the last 10 years.
Good for you. That's awesome. And so June 1st, big day for Corteva. I was in Nice, France at the International Seed Federation meetings, and there was certainly a big launch and a lot of discussion about this spin-off for Corteva and what it means for the organization. One of the things they talked a lot about was open innovation. And they had an open innovation day. Their focus was on open innovation. And I'm curious, what does open innovation mean to Dave and to Corteva here in Canada?
For me, it's the phrase that's being used internally that captures that, I think, is bring the outside in. Okay. And I think as I think back on my career and the evolution of the organization as I've worked with Pioneer and now Corteva, is the pendulum has swung from, if we don't invent it here, we're not interested,
Right.
to recognizing that in this complex world, one needs to leverage developments in other organizations, in the public sector, et cetera. So for me, the open innovation is being open to bringing the technology that presents opportunity in, and not being married to inventing everything yourself.
Boy, that's an interesting concept, and maybe we should play this for our Seed Synergy brethren that are downstairs, talking about how to figure out how to create the next evolution of the seed system. Because I think that idea of having to develop it ourselves, that's kind of previous thinking, isn't it? Right. Now it's about collaboration, and how do we bring the best out of each group, whether we're consolidating or collaborating or working on our own. It's to figure out how to bring the best from each piece. That's a great way to lay out open innovation. I think you should have been in south of France. That would have been a good add into the mix. I'm curious, what would you say has been the biggest evolution, enhancement, improvement since the merger of Dow DuPont and the rollout of Corteva? What would you see has been the biggest change or improvement?
I think it's the term that's been used a lot since the spin, or leading up to the spin as a standalone, is that we're an ag business.
Right.
And just having that preoccupation with not just our farm customer, which is our primary customer, but now being dedicated to the food and fiber and energy sector, really, that agriculture serves throughout the value chain. That's pretty encouraging for someone with their roots in agriculture to be a part of an organization whose focus is creating value in the agriculture/food system.
Right. I will commend you for acknowledging that it's agriculture/food. We really do have to remember we're in the food business, don't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's critical. So the flip side question to that is, what's one thing that has either created challenges or places that maybe have created some speed bumps that weren't there before in this new evolution?
Well, I think, as this season has played out, it's no secret that the North American field crop production sector went through a spring like most of us have not seen before. And whether that's the pervasive wet weather and delayed planting throughout the Corn Belt, or early dry weather in Western Canada, really tough start to the spring. So being a pure play ag company, you realize how dependent we are on the health of our sector in any one year. And so I think that this is the confluence of our spin and one of the most challenging springs in history illustrates that we don't have the luxury of support from other business areas that might buffer,
right,
the circumstances we're in. So I think it's maybe that recognition that, wow, we're in this with our in deep with our customers and experiencing it the same way our customers are.
I think the merger that everyone would love to see is how to figure out how to merge with Mother Nature and figure her out, because she certainly does remind us she's in control.
Yes,
very, very much so. So technically now, fall armyworm is on the minds of many corn producers these days, especially in the past few weeks after news broke that it's been discovered in China. Why is this significant, and how does Corteva help in that fight?
Yeah, fall armyworm is a challenging pest. It's a pest of the subtropical corn production, and the significance of that is it's multi-generational. It just keeps coming at you because it is adapted to such a warm environment, and insects in warm environments are multi-generational. So whether your strategy is to protect a crop through a transgenic trait or other management approaches like crop protectants, it's going to be a challenging pest to deal with just because it comes at you in waves. So I think an organization like ours can bring assistance to producers in areas that are newly afflicted with fall armyworm. Africa experienced it for the first time 2 years ago, maybe. I think there's somewhere in there.
Mhm.
And so we can bring traits. We have a number of traits that confer resistance in corn products. So if the region is amenable to transgenic solutions, that can be brought to bear. And then the usual insecticidal products that we offer can assist. And so I think we like to think that we bring, multiple solutions in an event like the arrival of a new pest like fall armyworm.
If you were going to pluck out some advice, we mentioned seed synergy, and we know that's a big topic here at a joint meeting with CSGA and CSTA. If you were thinking of some advice that you might share with the folks that are working on developing the next phase of Canada's seed system, what kind of advice might come from Dave?
I think it's that don't be. I've said this within our own shop numerous times when we're trying to develop strategy and a path forward. Is the phrase I've coined? I've probably stolen it from someone, but it is don't be a prisoner of your history. That. So, and that's another way of saying just because we've done it that way forever, don't assume we need to do it that way going forward. And I remember it was at a CSTA meeting 25 years ago, maybe. We had a presenter at the general meeting speaking about the issue of animal welfare and sort of the whole ethics in agriculture and societal interests in agriculture. And they were talking about how apparently, and I don't have independent experience with animal production to know this is certain, but the analogy was given that apparently confined animals like pigs raised in pens, if you open the pen up, they will run out and invariably run back in because they get outside of what they know and it's scary. And they go, even though there might be opportunity out there beyond the pen that they don't realize, but it's scary. And so they run back to the pen. And I sometimes think that our sector is a bit like that we're married to, the approaches to varietal registration, to certification of seed and production of seed, when there may well be opportunities by stepping outside of those confines and saying, if we made commercialization of products that much more straightforward, less intimidating to new entrants, et cetera, that there'd be great opportunity. And so my advice would be, don't confine yourself to the pen, to use my analogy.
Yeah, absolutely. A smart man, that's really well said. A smart man once told me that the 6 words of a dying organization are, "We've always done it that way." And I think it has the same sentiment as getting out of the pen. Right. I appreciate you sitting down and having a chat with me today, Dave. Great to see you.
Yeah, well, thank you, Shawn. I've enjoyed it.